Welcome to This is Glendale. I'm Village Administrator David Lumsden, and I'm here to present some important information about a decision that's going to impact the future of the village. We're going to review the potential impacts of new revenue on the village's general fund. The general fund funds the personnel and operations of the Glendale Police, Fire, Public Works, and Village Administrative Departments. This revenue is collected 83% through the village's property taxes, which you pay twice a year to Hamilton County. 17% of the village's revenue comes from other sources. This includes things like state grants, traffic ticket fines and receipts, and other miscellaneous things like the renting of village parks and town hall. It's important to note that the general fund does not include the revenues or expenditures for the operation of our water and sewer plants. Those are covered by the enterprise fund, which is funded through your quarterly utility bills. It's important when we talk about funding for the general fund to take a look at where the money that the village receives goes. This is a pie chart of the 2022 budget passed in December of last year by council, and it shows that 66% of the budget, approximately $1.77 million, is spent for personnel and benefits for village employees. Again, this includes police, fire, public works, and administrative personnel, and things like health insurance, life insurance, dental insurance, and other benefits that the village employees receive. Supplies and materials, almost $900,000, makes up 33% of our budget. That includes fuel, heating and electric bills, and office supplies and other items that these departments use to maintain their operations for the village. Also included in our budget is a $25,000 contingency. That number is used to project our deficit going forward so that we can anticipate for costs that we don't include in our regular operating budgets for things like vehicle repairs or other mechanical failures that we might experience during a regular year. This chart represents a breakdown of general fund expenditures by department for our 2022 budget. As you can see, the police department is nearly 40% of the general fund operating budget. That includes all of our full and part-time police officers, police lieutenants, police sergeants, and police chiefs, as well as our police clerk and the services that they provide to the village. The refuse and street maintenance departments make up 28% of the budget. These are our public works employees and the materials and supplies they need to complete their work. The Glendale Fire Department makes up a little over 11% of our budget, as does the village administrative staff in the village office. As you can see, there are a number of other smaller percentages that make up the remainder of our budget. A number of these are operating expenses for things like the Glendale Mayor's Court and public buildings, but also include charges to Hamilton County for participation in the Hamilton County Health Department and fees paid to the county auditor to collect our property taxes. So as we prepared the 2022 budget, and as council put that budget out and approved it in December of 2021, it was important to take a look at where we would end 2022 based on the revenues and expenditures that we've anticipated. We estimate our revenues at $2.5 million. Our appropriations are estimated at $2.6 million. The contingency that I mentioned earlier included at $25,000. We estimated a 2022 deficit of nearly $98,000 as a result of our expenditures less our revenues. The village also receives an additional holdback from Hamilton County for unpaid property taxes. This accounts for 3% of our estimated property tax revenues. The county holds this amount back to make up for non-payment of property taxes. Now, in the village, it's very unlikely that someone will not pay their property taxes. So we typically do receive this full amount. Unfortunately, we can't budget for it and present that budget to the county. So that's included as a footnote on our budget documents. Therefore, our estimated adjusted 2022 deficit is $33,532. So moving forward, it's important to look at this data and forecast out how things will change for the village and its financial situation in the general fund. This chart, and all the charts to come, cover from 2022, where you can see the budget deficit of $33,000 that we discussed earlier, all the way to 2028, where you can see an anticipated deficit of $539,000. This chart represents what the village's anticipated annual deficit will be if we simply renew the 8.5 mil levy in November. The 8.5 mil will join the 10 mil as the two alternating property tax levies every 4 years in the village. This chart shows that as a result of things like inflation, that the village's estimated revenues will be outpaced by our estimated expenditures going forward. This chart indicates the anticipated surplus and deficit for an additional 2.5 mils on top of the 8.5 renewal. This shows that same $33,000 deficit in 2022, but then shows a surplus of $147,000 in 2023, $80,000 in 24, $2,000 in 25, and then beginning to collect deficits in 2026. This assumes passage of an additional 2.5 mils. That property tax will be assessed in addition to the 8.5 and 10 mils that currently appear on tax bills. The best way to calculate what your anticipated cost will be per $100,000 is to take that proposed new millage number and multiply it by 35. So the anticipated cost per $100,000 in home valuation for a 2.5 mil levy would be $87.50. Another potential revenue generation option is an income tax. The village of Glendale is one of 4 communities in Hamilton County that does not have an income tax. An income tax is a popular way to collect revenue because it adjusts with inflation as residents and employees within the village wages rise. Using a projected 0.5% income tax with information collected by RETA, the Regional Income Tax Authority, who the village would use potentially to collect this income tax, we can see that the village anticipates the same $33,000 deficit in 2022, a deficit of $136,000 in 2023, and then surpluses until 2028. Why a deficit in 2023? That's because, unlike property taxes, income taxes take an additional year to be generated and collected and returned to the village. For income earned in 2023, the income tax would not be collected until tax time in 2024, meaning that the village would not realize this revenue until that year. So we should anticipate a deficit in 2023 should this be the revenue generation option that the village proceeds with. As a point of comparison, we wanted to provide an option for a property tax levy that would compare to a 0.5% income tax. The best comparison is a 4 mil additional property tax levy. This gives an indication of where the village could anticipate its revenues going forward should we propose a property tax that would match in value based on our projections as far as what revenue the village could anticipate receiving. As you can see here, in 2022, we would have the same deficit of $33,500. We would see a surplus in 2023 of $317,000. That surplus is explained because property taxes are paid in arrears based on the prior year's property valuations. So you would begin to pay an additional property tax next year, meaning that the village would begin to receive its revenue more quickly than with an income tax. At the meeting on June 22nd, there were many questions about the village's finances and budgeting process. So in addition to the numbers that I've presented, I'm going to also review how the village budgets its finances and how we come to those surpluses and deficits that I talked about earlier. So the budgeting process for the village is complicated, but is simple when we break it down. Each year, the village council passes a budget with estimated revenues and anticipated appropriations. The property tax revenue estimates that the village uses come directly from Hamilton County, and other revenue, that's 17% of the budget that we talked about earlier, That comes from information from prior years that we use to estimate how many things like park rentals and truck rentals we will have in the village on any given year. The appropriations are based on prior years, anticipated work that the village's departments will be completing, as well as inflation. The surplus or deficit is based on revenues less expenditures. So when we calculate our budget, we take our revenues, we subtract our appropriations, and that gives us our annual surplus or deficit. Reserves. Now, there were some questions at the meeting on the 22nd about general fund reserves. What is a general fund reserve? When a surplus exists in one of our annual budgets, that surplus amount is available to be budgeted in future years. So this recurring amount is referred to as reserves. This does not mean that this money exists in a bank account ready for use. In fact, it represents a rolling balance in the village's accounting ledger. So for these purposes, we look at our estimated revenue plus our reserves balance, and that becomes the amount that we have available for appropriation. When it comes to spending our reserves, the village maintains a reserve balance of about $1.2 million in the general fund. This money would fund about 6 months of general fund operations for our police, fire, public works, and administrative departments. It's also used to address large planned and unplanned expenses. For instance, general fund reserves were relied on for the paving of Sharon Road. It also allows for council to pass deficit budgets. If that reserve amount were zero, then all of our budgets would have to match our revenues to the cent. And unfortunately, with current inflation costs, as well as the projects that the village is undertaking, that's not a possibility. The last piece of the village's budget process is the difference between a bank and a fund. A bank represents the actual bank account that the village holds for deposits and withdrawals. The village has 2 primary checking accounts, the general checking and the enterprise checking. The general checking covers all village funds, which we'll get to in a minute, while the enterprise checking only covers the enterprise funds, so the operations of the water and sewer plants. When you pay your water bill, those are deposited into the enterprise checking account to allow us to pay salaries and operational expenses for the operation of our utility. When you pay your property taxes, that is deposited into the general checking account to allow us to continue to fund the operations of our police, fire, public works, and administrative staff. Banks represent the amount of cash that the village has at any given time. This will be different than the amounts that appear on our budget spreadsheets, because those budget spreadsheets cover an entire year's worth of appropriations, whereas we may have any amount of money in any bank account at any given time that may or may not be equal to the full year's amount required. That's due to the different timelines for the receipt of our revenues. When we talk about funds, like the general fund or the enterprise funds, we're referring to the village books, to our accounting system, and the things that we use to keep track of how much money we receive and how much money we spend. The village maintains about 31 funds, including the general fund, 4 enterprise funds, and 1 main capital fund, referred to as VPGI. VPGI stands for Village Plan and General Improvement Fund. That funds the purchases for large vehicles, for fire equipment, police equipment, as well as things like playground equipment. These funds are a self-contained accounting grouping of revenue and expenditures. It allows us to track more specifically what each operation costs the village. Part of the administrative staff's work is making sure that the bank account numbers and the fund numbers reconcile. What we mean by that is that the amount that we show on our bank statements equals the amount that shows in our village books. That is part of the auditing process that the village goes through twice a year. As the village continues to deliberate and decide how we're going to proceed to address these projected deficits, as well as complete the work that's going to keep our village infrastructure and amenities operating, it's important to continue this conversation with residents and get their input and answer any questions that might be remaining as we continue this work. Please, if you have questions or want more information or want me to go over something with you in person, maybe address a situation that's unique to you, please reach out to me. My email address is here on the screen, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. This is an important process that ensures the financial health of our village for many years to come. We want your input and want to make sure that your needs and your questions are being addressed. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Tyler Jeffries for This is Glendale. I'm here at Glendale Elementary with the Princeton City School Mobile Book Center. Let's go check it out. We're inside with Trisha Roddy, Director of Communications for Princeton City Schools. She's going to tell us a little bit more about the Mobile Book Center. Hi, Trisha.
Hi, Tyler. Well, thanks for coming to visit us on our Princeton Mobile Book Center. This is our 5th year of running the actual bus, and we are so excited to be in the neighborhoods, being able to offer students and anyone in the neighborhood the opportunity to get on and get some free books. Our books that we have are all donated, so we allow students and families to take up to 3 at a time, and they can keep them for as long as they're enjoying them. So it could be a day, a week, a year, forever. If they love those books, we want them to keep them. If they get tired of the books, they return them to a school, bring them back to the Mobile Book Center, or give them to a friend. We just want to encourage people to have really good books to read and keep reading.
Great. So I understand that this kind of came about from a grant, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how this got started? Who started it? I hear you were one of the co-founders, right? Tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
Sure. Well, before my current role, I worked at Sharonville Elementary as the librarian, and I felt that, we had lots of books on the shelves that sat there during the summer, and we had students that needed books over the summer. So we kind of started this program just putting books in crates and taking them into the communities and offering a drop by, come and play with us and read some books and play games kind of opportunity. And after 3 years of that, we thought, we really would be better served if we had a vehicle that was able to get into the communities to really be able to maximize our reach and make sure that lots of people had the opportunity to have this experience. So a grant opportunity came open by Scripps Howard Foundation, and so we worked with that. Amy Price, who is the head librarian at Princeton City Schools, and we wrote that grant and worked with a big team of people to make sure that we could operate a vehicle like this without using any tax dollar money. So we won a $100,000 grant from Scripps Howard Foundation that was also part of Channel 9 WCPO and also Duke Energy Foundation. And then with that, and then also a big help from Lowe's Foundation, Lowe's furniture store. They helped furnish all of the inside. So they gave us all the wood to build and the materials to put down the flooring and all the screws and hardware. So we were able to maximize our dollars as much as possible and buy lots of books for the first couple years and run the program for 3 years without any tax money at all. Awesome. And then during COVID times, we were using the bus much more frequently. So we did use a little bit of ESSER funding during that time period, but we were able to stretch that $100,000 out really far. And just now we got a new grant from the Scripps Howard Foundation for $15,000. So we know that we'll be able to run at least another 2 years without any funding from the schools. So it's really a great opportunity to be able to offer this without using tax dollar money.
Great. So we've got a lot of folks in Glendale who watch this show, and I know a lot of people would like to help out if they can. Can you tell us, how can people help the Bookmobile? Do you take donations? Where can they find the bus? I know it's in Glendale Fridays from 9:30 to 10:30, correct?
Yes.
And then what kind of books are you guys looking for? Do you take donations? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So we definitely love having volunteers come and work on the bus. So we have 2 staff people that are always on the bus, but then we have volunteers that come out and read to students, play games with them, and also take them on virtual reality field trips. So that's really fun. And then we do take book donations. Right now, we are in great need of board books and graphic novels, but we are looking for any books that elementary children would read. So pretty much from beginning readers all the way up to 3rd, 4th grade, around 10 years old. We definitely need those books. They can bring them directly to the bus, or they can bring them to a Princeton City school, and we can get them on the bus that way, or they can drop them off at our administration center. And all of our information can be found on our website, and that's at www.princetonschools.net/PMBC. So www.princetonschools.net/PMBC.
Great. Well, I think we picked one of the hottest days to film this segment, so we're going to step on out of the bus and let some kids get in here and get some books. Later, we're going to turn into a special message from Anna Martinez from the Princeton Mobile Book Center, and she's going to have a special note for us for our Spanish-speaking audience. Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Ana Martínez, yo soy la asistente de padres bilingüe. Yo voy en la comunidad, en el centro de la librería móvil de Princeton. Si usted necesita ayuda completando sus formularios de formas finales, Final Forms, usted puede encontrarme en una de las paradas del bus y ahí le podemos ayudar. También puedes encontrar nuestro programa de horario en la página de internet de Princeton.
Hello, Jack Cook here. Just a friendly reminder that the Burwinkle Farm Truck will be in Glendale twice a week throughout the summer. That's every Monday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Stop by for a wide selection of melons and vegetables, including some of the best tomatoes in the greater Cincinnati area. Burwinkle Farm Truck will be found right here in the parking lot outside of the police station. Remember, that's every Monday and Thursday, 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Also, the Burwinkle people are looking for summer workers 14 and up at the Glendale truck. Go to their website, www.burwinklefarms.com, fill out the online application, check the Sharonville for locations, even though it's for Glendale. And again, follow the website below, and that's www.burwinkelfarms.com. This is Jack Cook, and I'll be closing this episode of This is Glendale. I'll see you next month.